Hi, I'm Ollie and this is Queer Wheels Corner. Today I will be doing my September wrap-up of all of the books that I read in September. So the first book that I started was The House of Impossible Beauties by Joseph Cassara. The image on the screen is of the book cover, which has a face on it, and the title and the author name. I did not finish this book. There's no real reason for that. My reading mood changed drastically and I just couldn't force myself to push myself through it. I honestly can't even tell you what it was about or the plot. There was a lot of queer representation and it looked like an interesting book. I just couldn't force myself to do it, and that happens to me sometimes. The next book that I read this month was Sea of Shadows by Kelly Armstrong. I gave this book 2.5 stars. The image on the screen is of the book cover, and it is a blue-green foresty background with a design in the middle that is most likely blood, and it has white text. Content warnings for this book: blood, like a lot of blood, body gore, and a possible sexual assault of a minor that is kind of clarified but not completely. So the premises of this book is that there are these two sisters, and every so often, I think it's every year, there's this ritual where one of the sisters goes into the forest and helps the dead people move on. So she goes into the forest and there are some complications, and then she comes back and their entire village is attacked. There's these creatures that are out of horror stories or scary stories. The sisters get separated, and so they're trying to find each other while also trying to tell the next closest community what happened and trying to get help. This story had really predictable characters. They didn't ever really surprise me. The story overall wasn't challenging. It was a pretty fast read for me. It took me about 4 hours total. I didn't regret reading this book, but I really wasn't interested in the other books in the series either. The next book that I read this month was Timeline by Michael Crichton. I did do a video review of this book already, so I will link to that in the description. When I first reviewed this book, I gave it 4 stars, but after thinking about it for a while, what happened in the book really annoyed me, and so I had to lower that down to 3 stars. The next book that I read this month was This Is Day One, A Practical Guide to Leadership by Drew Dudley. The image on the screen is of the book cover. It is a yellow background with black text. Now, so this is a self-help book about leadership. The major idea in this book is that everyone and anyone can be a leader if they choose to be. Leadership isn't just the ginormous leadership changes or things that we tend to associate with leadership. The author, Drew Dudley, gives examples of how to change your thinking and how to start putting your leadership goals into action. I gave this book 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. Now, that being said, I am little bit biased about this though, because I have been following Drew Dudley's TED Talks and speaking career for about 4 years now. And a lot of what he teaches in his TED Talks and his speeches is reiterated in the book. But there is enough new content in the book that it is still really helpful and interesting to read about. I read this book as an ebook. The next book that I read this month was called My Broken One by G.L. Stiles. The image on the screen is of the book cover, which is a black background with a chain that is starting to break on it, and purple text is in the Omega verse, and it follows the relationship of two brothers, one who is a alpha and one who for most of the book is a undefined. There's gay representation in this book. There's fantastic comical banter. The characters are intriguing, and there's a lot of loyalty dynamics that interact in really interesting ways. I absolutely loved the characters in this book. This book does end in a cliffhanger, though. Overall, I gave this book 5 stars. The next book that I read this month is my Bereft one by G.L. Stiles. It is the second book in the True Mate series, and I read both of these books as ebooks. The image on the screen is of the book cover, which is a light purple background with a completely broken chain and dark purple text. All of the things that I just said I loved about my broken one apply to this book too. I'm not usually a fan of drama. I could not put these books down. The second book takes place 13 years after the end of the first book. In those 13 years, the main characters have grown up into their own people with their own lives, their own problems. So there's a lot of catching up to do in the second book. I liked a lot of things about the second book. There's awkward but truthful communication. It's repeatedly mentioned that Matt goes to therapy, and usually when people talk about therapy or going to therapy, it's not really talked about as a positive thing, whereas in this book it is talked about repeatedly and it's a regular, healthy part of Matt's life. And I think that's a really important thing to show. So I really liked that. To be honest, I liked the second book better than I liked the first one. The first one was cute and intriguing, but the second one was where you really got into the nitty-gritty of these characters and their development. The only thing that stopped me from giving the second book 5 stars as well was that G.L. Stiles is self-published and there were a lot of spelling errors. Side note, I got to meet the author of My Broken One and My Bereft One. She is a fantastic human being. If you're interested in these books at all, or if you would like to see more of her, I will link in the description a author interview that one of my friends did with her over on her own channel, Amber, at Amber Unabridged. It's a fantastically comical, just fun interview. You should watch it. The next book that I read this month was Love, Hate, and Other Filters by Samira Ahmed. Content warning for this book: terrorist attacks, specifically a suicide bombing, casual use of ableist language, crazy, Indian slurs, hate crime, and violence. Now, this book is about a Indian girl living in America with her parents. Her parents still cling to the traditional Indian ways and mindsets. They have very specific goals for what they want her to be in her life and what's acceptable. And of course, they want her to marry a good Indian boy, and she doesn't want to do any of this. She has dreams of creating movies. I gave this book 2 stars. I guess I'm just kind of tired of that whole trope of, the Indian parents want the Indian child to do these very specific things and marry the good Indian boy or girl. I'm just kind of tired of this trope, to be honest. I think it was tied up way too nicely at the end. Slight spoiler alert warning. I will put the black and yellow spoiler alert warning image up just in case you don't want to hear these spoilers. Just skip ahead until the black and yellow warning image is off the screen. towards the end of the book, her parents disown her and say that she's dead to them as daughter. And then like 15, 20 pages later, she's at the school of her dreams and on fantastic terms with her parents again. Like, it just unrealistic. Overall, I thought it was an interesting book. I thought it was interesting how we got to see how she related to the terrorist attack, her fear with that, and how her peers reacted to her as a part of that and lumped her in, even though she has lived in America her whole life and has no ties to the terrorist and all of these other things. So I do think it was a really good portrayal of how people lump groups of people together with one or two problematic examples from that group, and I gave it 2 stars. So that is all the books that I finished or did not finish in September. I also started in September Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro, and I'm about halfway done with this book, and I am absolutely loving it. If you can see the little green tags, when I annotate, the green tags mean that it's something that I really liked. The blue tags mean that it made me laugh. So this book so far is a combination of green and blue tags. It's a fantastic read, but it is a very intense book. I will most likely be doing a video review of Anger is a Gift in the coming month or so, so look out for that. I will put a link to all of the books that I've discussed in this video in the description, as well as the link to my friend's channel, Amber Unabridged, for that author interview with G.L. Stiles. And I will also include a link to Drew Dudley's website if you have interest in finding out more about his speaking career or his leadership ideals. Thanks so much for watching my September wrap-up. If you liked or didn't like any of the books that I read this month, please feel free to leave a comment about why you either did or didn't like the book. Did you agree with my assessments? Did you think I was completely wrong about a certain book? If you like the content that I'm providing thus far, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. And as always, all videos will always be captioned. Have a great day!